Welcome to Tabuk, a podcast about banned and controversial children's books. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Maria.
And in this episode, we look at Yevgeny Prigozhin, who spent 9 years in a Russian penal colony, interfered in US elections, and founded a mercenary group that committed war crimes across the globe. And he wrote a really weird children's book. What's that about? I have a quiz for you.
Yes.
So today's author is the author of one children's book. This is a Russian author, and this guy's a bit of a Renaissance man, a bit of a girl boss.
Oh, cool.
So I'm gonna read out a list of other things that this guy may or may not have done,
Yeah.
and I want you to guess whether they're true or not, just based off of you understand children's book authors.
Of course.
So you know what makes them tick.
Of course, they are all completely normal people.
Yes. Okay, which of the following is not true?
Okay.
This man spent 9 years in a Russian penal colony.
Okay.
This man was indicted for interference in the 2016 US elections.
Oh, okay.
This man committed war crimes in Ukraine. This man ran a successful catering business.
Oh. Mafia queen.
And finally, this man died in a suspicious jet crash, which Vladimir Putin promised to look into.
They all are so unhinged that I'm gonna say they're all true.
You're correct. Ding, ding, ding. Welcome to our episode on Yevgeny Prigozhin. Among a lot of other things, he was a children's book author. Let's get into it.
Okay. Horrifying start.
Horrifying. I will say, we have talked about children's book authors who are like secretly kind of not the best people. But I feel like this is the first time we've been like, oh, here's a war criminal who is secretly a children's book author. And I think that's really interesting.
That is exactly the kind of life I want.
Oh my
like
God,
when people are
yes.
like so unhinged, but she secretly is a good person. Oh my
I
God.
wouldn't go that far with Prigo, but okay.
No, but like that's the life I want.
Yeah.
He chose other paths.
He chose the dark side. He was called Putin's chef because he did run a successful catering business which worked for Russia's elite, including Vladimir Putin.
Okay.
This happened throughout the 2000s, which is actually when he wrote his children's book. The children's book is called Indraguzik, is my best attempt at pronunciation. It's a nonsense word. It was never put up for sale.
Okay.
And no, like I've looked, no copy exists like on the internet. The Moscow Times managed to get a copy and they wrote some articles about it, but they did not upload it, unfortunately. So everything we know about this book comes from like compilations of different sources.
Okay, it's a secret book.
It's a secret book. So he printed maybe 1,000 or 2,000 copies and he distributed them among his clients, basically, and his friends.
Oh.
Yeah.
Imagine you order a catering business and the guy's like, okay, but you have to read my book.
Yes. And this is a 95-page picture book.
Oh. Was his food really good?
Maybe you needed the distraction.
I will say that as a supervillain name, Putin's chef is not really the best.
Yeah, no.
It's like, you know how Batman villains have like really weird names?
Yeah, he could have been the Penguin or something.
But I feel like it's same vibes because like a supervillain called the Penguin, like
yeah,
you're not even scary animals.
No.
Like if I'm gonna be named after an animal as my supervillain name, I would want to be called like a cis white man.
We'll return to Indraguzik, but I want to give you an overview of this man in case you haven't heard of him.
Okay.
He did become Putin's chef after spending 9 years in prison for theft.
Wait, so he went to prison before he was a war criminal?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Oh,
that was the beginning of his like supervillain arc.
okay.
So he was sentenced to 13 years of labor for
Oh,
theft. He got out, he sort of reformed himself, became a caterer, and that is how he met Putin. And
okay.
from that point on, his MO in life for a while was just being useful to Putin, who was,
Oh,
you know, a rising strong man, like consolidating his power at the
a
time.
rising star
A rising star.
in the villain world.
So, for example, in like 2011, 2012, Putin was reelected as president of
Uh-huh.
Russia. It was very obviously fake.
Yeah.
Before then, people kind of thought of Russia as a new democracy. So everyone
Mm,
was like, ah, fuck.
of course.
Putin's job then was trying to like astroturf, so like make it seem like all the Russians were happy that he
Of
was
course. So
reelected.
he held parties for them constantly with catered food.
And children's books. No, but Prigozhin, like unrelated to catering, again, a man of many talents, infiltrated the protest movement, the anti-Putin protest movement,
Oh.
and also funded a documentary that made up the claim that people who were against Putin taking power were like stooges of the West.
Oh.
So yeah, later on, so in 2014, he founded the Wagner mercenary group, which if you've been following the war in Ukraine, you probably have heard of. It's been called a private arm of the Kremlin,
Okay.
basically. It's really funny because technically mercenaries are illegal in Russia and most places.
Yeah.
Like
No, they're legal here, but
yeah,
in Russia,
yeah,
mercenaries
yeah.
are not something they want.
It's all legal in Texas. It's fine. The Wagner Group began by recruiting from the Russian special forces, so it's sort of like an additional thing. And then they started emptying the Russian jails to get soldiers.
Okay.
And they got like over 20,000 soldiers through that. In May 2023, they were like really instrumental in capturing Bakhmut for Russia. They've committed a bunch of war crimes, not only in Ukraine, they've murdered like prisoners of war, tortured civilians, that kind of thing. Like bad group of people. Weirdly, he denied founding this mercenary group until 2022.
Oh.
So between 2014 and 2022, when everyone knew that he had founded it, he would threaten to sue journalists who linked him to this group, but he would issue statements about the group through his catering company.
Imagine just like KFC, like
Yeah,
posting like, "Oh, we have nothing to do with this, but actually politics." And you're like, "Oh, let's
news
attack."
reports. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's do it this way. And then it happens and everyone's like, "How did KFC know?"
yeah. Colonel? Well,
Colonel.
well.
You know what?
Fair.
Captain Crunch also should get involved.
Oh my god.
Yeah, all the weirdly military men of food.
Why are there so many military men in food?
2?
Yeah.
Are there more?
Um, I don't
Tony the tiger
Tony the
is
Tiger,
just a tiger.
but he's very like police coded for me.
I feel like he is a jock.
Yeah.
He could be a policeman,
Um,
that's true.
Aunt Jemima would like report the activities of civilians to the cops. Aunt Jemima
Ooh.
is like not,
Don't like
no,
her.
she's not real. So
She's just syrup. It's not real.
she's
None of them are. Oh my.
okay, anyway. So then he created the Internet Research Agency, which
Okay.
sounds very vague, but this is what helped Trump win in 2016. And he's been indicted for this. He doesn't care.
He's dead.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think he cared even when he was alive. His catering firm
Mhm.
posted the following comment. We have interfered in US elections. We are interfering and we will continue to interfere.
Like, why?
I mean, he definitely felt like he was just doing what Putin wanted, and he probably felt really protected by, being the little stooge for this incredibly powerful guy.
Yeah. Never trust powerful men.
Foreshadowing. In October of 2022, he started increasingly criticizing the hand that was feeding him, basically. He was basically saying that Russia wasn't providing the Wagner Group with enough, like, arms and stuff.
He's like, "You want me to attack, but
Mm,
with my own money? No
exactly.
way. Give me the money."
Yeah. Um, he issued a statement. I don't know if this was him or through his catering company,
Of
but the
course.
statement said that Russia's military commanders should be sent with assault weapons barefoot to the front. And this actually led to an attempted mutiny where the Wagner soldiers marched on Moscow with the intention of replacing some of these high up people,
And taking their shoes.
taking their shoes and sending
Yeah,
them to the front,
unfortunately.
or worse. So Putin sort of sat down with Prigozhin and like they sort of talked things out. Prigozhin was sent to Belarus.
Mhm.
But from that point on, he was a dead man. Like Putin is not forgiving of what he
Oh,
considers to be treason.
of course. He's not known for this.
In August of 2023, 2 months after this little revolution, Prigozhin was killed when his jet crashed near Moscow.
Oh, suspicious.
Who knows? Who knows what happened? And Putin was like, so
Putin just went like the little meme of the cat, like, oh, maybe it's not a meme. Maybe it's just a picture I saw.
okay. So that's Prigozhin. That's who we're dealing with.
Okay.
This is a man who's clearly capable of reinventing himself. Indraguzik, I am doing my best, was published in 2004 by a publisher called Agat, which I can find no information about. So the Moscow Times describes it as little known, and that is correct. I know very little about it. This story is set in a land of like small people who
Okay.
live in a theater chandelier. So
Okay.
we have our protagonist, little Indraguzik, and he falls out of the theater chandelier and he gets accidentally kidnapped when a normal sized person wraps him up in his newspaper and takes him onto the subway.
Oh no, horrifying.
The normal sized person is called Big Indraguzik.
Is that his actual name or is that the name in the book?
I mean,
Imagine if I were called Little Maria.
mhm.
That's foreshadowing for something awful.
He goes in the Moscow subway and he finds himself on a wonderful adventure where he searches for a magic flute and makes friends along the way. One of the people that he meets is Gagarik, an old man with a bird and a trench coat, who makes soup for little Indraguzik. The Moscow Times was like, this might have been a reference to the restaurant business. All of our protagonists find a balloon, they fly back to the chandelier. You'd think the story would end there,
Mhm.
but no, because
Oh.
this is 95 pages. So Indraguzik takes his new friends to Indraguja, which is his country,
Oh.
and they meet his king.
Wait, so he's basically like his name is as if I were called Mexican.
Yeah.
Little Mexican.
There's Little Mexican, Big Mexican, and Mexico.
But somehow Big Mexican is not from Mexico.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's just called Big
Yeah.
Mexican.
Uh, the chandelier is discovered to be magic, so you can take small people and eh, grow them to the size of ordinary people. So they want to help the king, and they use the chandelier to make the king bigger to help him out. But they do it wrong, and he turns into a giant.
Oh no.
And he says, how can I rule my people if they are so small? Please make me the same king I was, only a small king can rule the Indraguziks. The king pleads to be returned to his original size, and they do so.
This is bizarre.
This like unhinged.
Like, what is the metaphor for this?
It sounds like a dream. Like someone is like, "Hey, I had the most insane dream," and then they're like, "Blah," and you're
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
me every morning.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah."
fair.
Honestly, I love your morning voice notes.
I'm like, the other day I dreamt that I had a beard, but it was like the ugliest beard I've ever seen. It was just like scraggly hairs coming out of my chin. It was
Ew. Oh
awful.
my
And then
god.
when I woke up, I just kept like stroking my chin, being like horrifying.
The book ends with the line, "That's it. I don't really know any stories anymore."
What?
It's heavily illustrated as
Okay.
well. I will pop some illustrations on the screen if you are watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, imagine the worst thing you can think of. It looks like that. Originally, Prigozhin took credit for the illustrations,
Oh.
but he did not draw them. They were commissioned.
Oh.
So
Imagine.
I do want to quote Konstantin Kalachev, who is a Russian political expert, and
Uh-huh.
he said that Prigozhin is a very like Russian kind of person. So, and
Okay.
he said that, he just basically evolved with Russia, shifting personalities and careers as suited him. I think like the one through line for all of this is self-confidence. He is a mirror of the times, he said. As long as being good was in fashion, he was good, but then the time came for evil and
Was
he
he
became
ever good?
evil. Yeah, I think they must be pointing to the children's book as the good part. But like, oh my god, like don't ascribe any kind of morality to someone just because they wrote a children's book. For God's sake, if you take one thing from this podcast. So, he did give an interview in 2004 where he said that at bedtime he had few stories to tell that were fit for the ears of children.
Wait, did he have children
He
with this?
did. So he had a boy and a girl, and they were the quote unquote authors of this book.
Oh,
Although they obviously didn't write this book, but he said that because there were no children's books that were suitable for his children, and he obviously didn't know any because he was hardened
petty
convict,
petty
petty thief,
thief.
yeah. He invented these stories, and then his children
Mhm.
begged him to publish them. I want to say a little bit about the state of children's books in Russia
Okay.
because when he said that there were no good children's books, I was like, what do you mean? Because I grew up listening to like Russian fairy tales, like Ivan and the Firebird. Like Russian fairy tales are like they slap. So when okay, it's difficult to imagine this man as a child, but
Okay.
presumably he was one once. And in the 60s and 70s, when he
Mhm.
would have been engaged with children's books, that was an interesting time for literature in the Soviet Union for children's books because it was kind of a thaw. The early part of the 20th century, children's books were very strict. They were very like, this is how you learn how to be a good Soviet child and
Oh dear.
contribute to the Soviet Union. So we've seen this trend in a lot of different countries. It's like it happens at one point or another. And it was basically like, hey, what if we accepted the children were people who wanted entertainment and fun stories?
People?
People. And not just like little soldiers that we raise up to fit into the totalitarian cogs of the machine. Yeah, there was a lot more sort of realism, um, but also there was, a lot of fantasy, fairy tales, science fiction, because, the race to the moon was happening at that point. So everyone was really inspired and feeling really like optimistic. And that was
About the
true
moon.
about the moon. Then unfortunately, as often happens with Russia, there was another backslide.
Oh no.
So the government really tamped down on artistic freedom.
Boo.
Boo. However, children's literature in Russia was kind of a little safe space.
Mhm.
It's like if you can disguise your commentary behind enough nonsense or enough sort of childish whimsy,
Mhm.
then you can actually get away with saying a lot more
Of
than you
course.
would have if you were like, I'm an adult and this is my political art. So a lot of people who were actually like artists, writers for adults moved into children's literature because that was one of the few places in Russia where you could actually express yourself.
Okay.
For example, the Nobel Prize winning poet Yosif Brodsky published a lot of children's writing in Leningrad before he was kicked out of the USSR. But you can also see, like a precursor to
Yeah.
Indraguzik, that nonsense is is in itself a political statement, and it was really respected. It like children's literature was really respected. I was really interested in his experience as a child, and then also his children were children. In the early 2000s, Russian literature had sort of changed again,
Mhm.
and it became much more commercial, less of an emphasis on like high quality art or like art as, political statement, and more of just like, oh, this series is making a lot of money,
Mm.
which is something that happens in the publishing industry as a whole. Um, but I went into this being really like rolling my eyes at him, saying that he couldn't find any good children's books. Um, and looking at the history of children's publishing in Russia, actually, yeah, I can see why he would have been like upset to see the kinds of books that were being published in the early 2000s
Fair.
compared to the ones from his childhood.
Valid.
I think you can kind of see, like, this is more of a harkening back to the kinds of books that happened, like, in his childhood.
Yeah.
I think he's positioning himself as almost like an important artist. He's touching on some political tropes with like, we have to help the king and we have to make sure that the king is, the right size
Yeah.
for the people.
Oh.
Um
I think you're going deep. You're
yeah,
like
hey, listen, this is analysis. We have a degree in this. Um
you're like, "Yes, he wrote this on purpose,"
yes.
which I don't believe, but I will believe you. Yes.
I
You
think
know him better than I do.
if there's one thing, apart from self confidence, I think it's a sense of self-importance
Yeah.
that he had his whole life. And if he is like, oh, artists get respect by writing children's books that touch on political subjects. I can totally see him sort of fitting that mold
Yeah.
and then
I'm
moving on.
I have important things to say.
Yeah.
Maybe I should write a children's book.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the story of Yevgeny Prigozhin, um, a children's book author, and among other things. And that's the story of his extremely strange children's book.
It's an interesting story, let's say.
Mhm.
Not his book in itself,
Mhm.
but everything that surrounds it.
All right. Well, thank you for spending time with us.
We'll see you soon.
We'll see you in 2 weeks with another unhinged deep dive into a children's book.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Comment below if any of your dreams could ever be turned into
Yes.
a nonsense children's book.
Yes.
We would love to hear it.
Yes, because currently the front runner is Maria's beard. And I think we can do better. All right. See ya.
Bye. The other day I felt like a grandma
Mhm.
because someone showed me like this picture, like meme
Mhm.
of a baby.
Mhm.
And it was like, just like a man with a small baby and then a man with a bigger baby. And the text was just like, oh, my baby grew so much. And they were like, ha ha ha, this is so funny.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just like a normal amount for a baby to grow. Like, I
Right.
don't understand what we're looking at. And they
Right.
were like, no, Maria, but you're not getting it. The baby grew so much. It's funny. I was like, but every baby grows that amount. It's not my fault. You have never seen a baby before. And so you think this is a meme. But like the baby grew a normal amount for a
I
baby to grow.
I've never heard of this meme, so I'm
It's
on
not
your
a
side
meme.
here.
It's not a meme. It's just a baby that grew.